Please call the roll.
Mayor Jorgensen.
Present.
Commissioner Wygand.
Present.
Commissioner Kaler.
Present.
Commissioner Crowley. Commissioner Skidmore.
Present.
It sounds like we do have 4 present. That is a quorum. Today is Wednesday, August 7th. The time is 7 p.m. and it's time for the regularly scheduled City Commission meeting. I'd like to welcome all who are attending here in our gallery and also tuning in on various electronic devices. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Reverend Ernest Jones. Oh, there he is. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Dear God, here we are in this space and this time. God, you have called this body together to take care of the business of this great city that you have given us. While we are finite and fragile, you still yet chose us. So God, we're so ever thankful for all that you've done and all that you're about to do. Be with these men and women as they make the various decisions that will affect the lives of many people in this city. So God, rest upon their hearts. Be with their families. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Jones. That'll move us on to our consent agenda, which include items 6 and 7, the minutes from our June 24 study session, as well as approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner,
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded as such. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. That moves us on to the regular agenda. Item 8, public comments. Persons who wish to address the City Commission regarding items on the agenda may do so as that agenda item is called. Persons who wish to address the City Commission regarding items not on the agenda and that are under the jurisdiction of the City Commission may do so at this time when called upon by the mayor. Comments on personnel matters and matters pending in court or with other outside tribunals are not permitted. All speakers tonight will be limited to 3 minutes. Any presentation is for information purposes only. Do we have anybody registered for public comments this evening?
We do not.
Okay. We will move on to declaration. At this time, I'd like to give the commissioners a chance to declare any conflict or communication that they've had that might influence their ability to consider today's issues impartially. Hearing none, we'll proceed to new business. Item 10.
Public hearing, City of Ottawa proposed 2020 budget.
A public hearing has been scheduled to receive comments about the proposed 2020 budget. Finance staff are prepared to make a short presentation on the highlights of the proposed budget and, along with the city manager, are available to answer questions. The published mill levy cannot be increased, but it may be reduced. After public comments have been received, it is recommended that the hearing be closed and, barring any amendments, the budget be adopted. So at this time, I shall open the public hearing, and we'll call on the city staff for a presentation. It's on.
So, greetings, commissioners and citizens who are watching us tonight. We have a 3-part presentation to give to you. I'm going to open up with some summary remarks, and then the city clerk will make a PowerPoint presentation to you, and the Assistant Director of Finance will also present a PowerPoint presentation to you, kind of summarizing where we've at, where we've been, and where we're going. So I think the first thing I'd like everybody to understand is that this is the most important policy decision that any governing body ever makes. It charts the course for not only the next year through 2020, but it also really sets in motion outlying years with some of the projects that you choose and some of the projects that you invest in your community. The budget process this year really started in May, I would say late April. Departments prepare budgets. They review those with myself and the finance department. We actually review each line item and we adjust that to fix next year's projections. And as you know, because of the cash balance situation that where we ended 2018, we actually did a pretty significant budget review earlier this year, the 2019 budget, and actually reduced budgets significantly across the board. And that is, before somebody thinks that's a normal occurrence, every year you may have cash balances come in higher than what you budgeted, and you can have them come in lower than what you budgeted. And when that happens, most of the time, you see things get shifted, but this was a little bit out of the norm this year, so that's why we went to such great length to work on the 2019 budget in earnest at the first of this year. I review the overall budget for justification on increased budgets, line items, where the levels are, areas of need, and then we bring that to you. And you hold your own budget hearings. You hold those with the department heads, and they review their budgets with you, and you help decide, you do decide where that budget is adjusted on by your feedback into the process. So the budget hearing's been called for tonight. We had to advertise that 20 days ahead of time. That gets a little challenging because we don't have a daily newspaper anymore, but the city clerk, whose responsibility it is to do that, makes sure that that is in the paper and is in there statutorily so that you can have that budget hearing tonight. And you'll notice that lots of other entities are are having their budget hearing also at this part of the season. In fact, our County Commissioner Dixon told me that the county had their budget hearing tonight. So the final thing is that once you make your adjustments, once you adopt the budget, then it has to be filed with the county clerk on August 25th. Now, here's the important thing to remember. The assessed valuation that you see, years ago, that used to be the final assessed valuation. But in the past several years, there's been some changes on how that's done at the state level. And you do not have, what you are doing is certifying property tax dollars with an estimated mill levy. The final mill levy is set on October 1st when the county clerk certifies what the final budget is for the coming budget year. And that can go up, or sometimes it's somewhat unusual. I've seen that valuation go down, and that's for every governmental agency. So that's my part, and I would turn it over to city clerk. Okay, you do it.
Very dramatic. The first part of the presentation that I'm going to go over with you is looking at some current information and also some of our historical data. So the first screen we're looking at is the levels of transfers made from 2016 through our 2020 budget from the electric fund to the general fund. Richard has mentioned in study session that this year we did trim $250,000 off of that from the prior year. So as you can see how that has fluctuated a little bit, our proposed 2020 budget includes the lowest transfer from the electric fund to the general fund that we've had in at least since 2016. You have seen a similar chart. We took mill levies for the 2018, which is the last certified total mill levy that Richard was just speaking about from the county clerk, and showed you what each division, and then some of the recreation and library, which fall under USD 290 in the city, what each mill levy is and what one mill was worth for that year based on that assessed valuation. The chart to your right corresponds to that. So the city, without including the library, was 21.2% of the total mill. Property tax levied, we're showing you in dollars, so the top 2020 is what you will see on your budget certification page. You can see that going up from 2016. Assessed valuation, again, is going up. In 2019, one of the American Eagle tax abatements expired at the end of 2018, and one of the abatements came back on the tax rolls in 2019. We also saw an American Eagle tax abatement expire at the end of 2019, showing which affected our valuation on both of those years. Mill levies from 2016 to 2020. We are showing a flat mill levy in the proposed 2020 budget from actual mill levy from the 2019 budget, which was certified by the county clerk. We listed some major projects and initiatives this year for the 2020 budget. So the police department will replace 2 patrol vehicles, and that is a cycle they try to keep with, and then they shift 2 down when 2 new are purchased. 2 mowers will be replaced in the Public Works Department. A proposed replacement vehicle in the Fire Department for the Assistant Chief. Replacement of a 2-ton flatbed. In the Fire Department, one of the major repairs will be a replacement of the roof over the apparatus bay. Continued annual street and sidewalk improvements that we do on an annual basis. Continued alley maintenance. And then there are funds budgeted for the city match for the K68 sidewalk project, the Connecting Link program, wind cone and segmented circle at the airport. There are still continued proximity park infrastructure improvements that'll continue into 2020. Continued park upgrades, and one major initiative in the 2020 budget is to rebuild fund balances. And we noted again, it's the first year of a decreased transfer from electric fund to the general fund. And I'm going to hand it off to Laurel.
All right, so I felt like showing exactly how the appraised value of a home and the mill levy, how everything would affect our citizens was important. Oh, thanks. And so I went with a pretty simple number. I just went with $100,000 because it was easier to follow. And then Kansas Constitution has the residential assessment rate at 11.5%. So that gives us an assessed value of your home at $11,500 that can be taxed. So you take that and you multiply it by your mill rate. And so over the course of the year in property taxes, you'll be paying about $556. And then if you split that out monthly, it would be about $46.36. And for that, you're getting fire, you're getting parks and cemeteries taken care of, police, you're getting street clearing and cleaning. And I grew up in the middle of nowhere, so when it snowed, I couldn't get up the hill, and being able to get to work on time is very nice. So I don't think that's nothing. All right, and so one of the first taxes for the city. Okay, so the city of Ottawa's tax rate is 9.6%. 6.5 of that is the state, 1.5 is the county, 1.6 is city. And of that, 0.5% that started in September of 2016 is for Proximity Park. And that's something that I have here. It looks like, comparing 2018 and 2019, January through May sales tax numbers are all above 2018. It looks like June and July are down. This is actually something that you'll see throughout this presentation, and we're just hoping it's a fluke and it's not a trend that's starting. Okay, so of that of that 1.6%, the 0.1% is a tax that started in 2001, and it's used to pay wastewater treatment and collection system improvement costs. And so overall, we're up about 2,500 here, but June and July are also down. Okay, and so this is your main city sales tax, and this is the 1% that was voted on for property tax stabilization and debt payments. It started in July of 2016, and it's supposed to go for 10 years. And once again, June and July are down. Looks like the rest of the year it has still been above what was collected in 2018. Okay, this is the county sales tax that we get. So it looks like we're up about 7,500 from 2018, and then March, June, and July were below 2018. Okay, so we're going to get into our actual funds for the city. So our general fund is our main fund. I want to note here again, well, not again. Okay, so June is down in 2019, and then it goes up high in July compared to 2018. And that is because the property taxes were booked in July. We had some adjustments from the county that needed to be made, so that just pushed that off a month. So otherwise, it would have followed a little bit more closely if it had hit a couple days before. So overall, it's pretty similar in the trend. Okay, and in this one, this is our revenues for the general fund. So like the unencumbered balance showed, our property taxes came in July instead of June, and so that's why those lines look a little skewed. All right. Okay. And I just thought I would cover, when we hit expenses, why some of the peaks are showing. So in March, it looks like we had transfers that went out to the airport, to risk management, and community services from the general fund, and that's why March is so much higher than the other months. Okay. And then the unencumbered balance for the water fund. It looks like in 2019, we're doing pretty good. It looks like we're above 18. The only thing is we do need to be aware that we'll be paying debt this month for the raw water line. And next year, we're also going to have the Main Street water line to pay for. So while that looks nice right now, it will be going down quite a bit. And then in March, if you follow the blue line, it's going down farther, and that has to do with transfers and debt payments. Okay. So this is just showing that revenue is under 2018 for our water fund, but like today, this has been a much wetter year than last year, so that's why our revenue for water is down. Okay. And expenses, we have in March, we had transfers and a debt payment. In June, we had transfers to risk management and the equipment reserve. We had roughly $40,000 in debt payments, $150,000 that went to risk management, and then $41,500 to community services. Okay, and then on wastewater, this also does look like we're doing pretty good. Something to keep in mind for 2019, we have a debt payment coming out this month that isn't shown here, and then we have roughly $932,500 that should be coming out of this fund by the end of the year. It looks like we're a little bit over $1 million $200,000 right now, so that is slightly concerning. We had a 5% rate increase in September of 2018. We have another 5% increase in September of 2019, and then there will be a 1% in 20 and then a 1% in 21. Okay. And I was trying to decide what exactly was causing this weird shape in April between 2018 and 2019. And really, the only idea I have is that it could have something to do with the re-averaging of wastewater that happens in April, because on your utility bill, you pay your new sewer or wastewater average in April, and they summarize December through March on your usage to get that number. So I am thinking that could be related to that, but I haven't found any other specifics. Okay, and then on expenses, we have a peak in February and a peak in March. It looks like we have debt payments in February, and then we have transfers in March to community services and risk management. Okay, and then on the electric fund, in September, we have a peak in our unencumbered cash. It looks like we have transfers for debt payments, general funds, community services, and proximity park. And it looks like our transfers were about $1,440,000. In December, it looks like we had transfers to the general fund for $340,000, and then we had the purchase power and purchase demand that was about $783,000, and so it was about $1.1 million in expenses. Revenue was down at that time, so that would result in the decrease you see there, where it just starts falling, because revenues, after it starts cooling off, people use less electric, and we have to buy purchase power and demand after we've used it, so that's another expense that would be dropping that unencumbered balance. On revenue, about the only thing I have is 2019 was more mild than 2018, and again, your electric usage drops with the weather cooling. On the expenses, in June we had a purchase power and demand again, so that would be that initial peak of an expense. In September we had a debt payment, and then we had transfers to the general fund, community services, and proximity park. And then in December, that is not shown here, it just raises a little bit. It was another purchase power and a transfer to general. And in December, the total purchase power and transfer was about $1.1 million again. All right. So on our proximity park sales tax fund, in 2018 we had costs like land acquisition, easements, your bond costs, your temp notes, and engineering. And then in 2019, we haven't had quite as many. We've had a few engineering. I think we had a single easement acquisition and some bond interest that had to be paid. Okay. And then revenues, just like we were talking earlier, June and July are both down from last year. Okay. And on our expenses, once again, we had land acquisition, easements, bond costs, temp notes, and engineering. And then I don't know if you can make out quite all of these numbers. They are just the difference between the 2019 adopted budget and the 2020 proposed budget. So we have a total of about $5,696,324 that we have decreased the 2020 budget from the 2019 adopted. And then this is just the publication notice that Amy had sent out. All right.
All right. Thank you, Laura. Do we have any questions oh, we have more.
So, Amy, if you would please hand out the PowerPoints to them. I would just tell you that this is kind of a summary of everything you've been looking at. I would also tell you, I was remiss in telling you that the graphs up there were also in large part done by my executive assistant, Laura Matthews, and I think she dreams about those when she goes home at night. So we would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
You don't want some there. Any questions to city staff at this time?
I have a question. First, I want to start out by saying I appreciate what the staff has done. I know that this year and preparing the budget for next year has not been an easy task. I know that many of our, not even many, all of our department heads have been asked to make cuts where they didn't necessarily want to do so. However, we didn't forsake public safety by making those cuts, but nevertheless, those were not easy. There's a form, a couple back on the PowerPoint that talks about the 2019 budget versus the 2020 budget, and many of those see an increase or a decrease. A couple of them that do see some large increases include the library with 7% increase. We also see employee benefits with 10% increase. And then we also see a 67% increase in the non-operating budget. And I wonder if somebody could address what it is that 67% is actually addressing.
I will defer to the city clerk because that really is a function, kind of an administrative function where we catch a lot of things, and I'll let her explain that.
Okay, I'm pulling that up right now if you'll give me just a second.
Sir, you want to repeat which categories we're talking about here again?
I just went through the format that is right here, the page that we actually have.
Right.
And I just noted that there is a 7% increase in the budget for the library. There's a 10% increase in the employee benefits line item. And there is a 67% increase in non-operating budget. But I have a feeling when we talked about this, I know we talked about that things were being kind of shifted around, and I wanted our city clerk, certainly our city manager, to address what it is actually being captured under that non-operating budget now. So although it appears to the public that it may be really large, the perception may be just a little bit skewed.
One shift that we made was how we handled general fund transfers. Some of them initially had been hitting individual budgets, and some were hitting the non-operating account where you're seeing that large increase. So we also increased, there's a line in that budget that is at the city manager's discretion for sidewalk and street improvements. So that went from 50 to 100,000 to just reset that value back up. We had decreased it. The others include, we moved the community services transfer of $41,005. There's a transfer to the airport of $52,887. A transfer to risk management of $100,000. We also budgeted a transfer for the wastewater treatment plant of $50,000. Hopefully not to use that. We said it if the sewer surcharge or sales tax came in lower than what the debt payment would be, so kind of as a reserve if we need to move that over. So there were some shifts from some of the other individual budgets on that. And Richard, I may defer to you on the employee benefits, but I believe part of that had to do with looking at the increases on what our premiums came in.
Right, and the HR director is here in case I tell you the wrong thing, but that budget is a function of Social Security, capers, some health insurance, and some things like that. And some of those have increased this year, and we took a closer look at just what we were doing there compared to past years, and that's how that calculation is done. That's what the increase in there, I think.
Some of it, I'm trying to read my memo I presented. Some of it, we actually budgeted a higher increase to health insurance beyond what Truss, our broker, recommended for the 2020 renewal. We still don't have that renewal, so we budgeted about a 16% increase for health insurance in general for those individuals that are in the general fund. Capers retirement, even though the contribution rate that the city pays is decreasing, that's also affected by salary. That's how that gets calculated. So there is a decrease there. There is a $48,000 increase in Social Security, a couple of others. KP&F, there is a decrease, but they have factored in, staff has factored in some potential retirements in police and fire, so that's why that is a bit skewed. And the health savings account, I don't think, Amy, I don't know if you addressed that, but that was in everyone's budgets. That's been moved back to the employee benefits fund, and that's about a $44,000 increase, which was, it was parceled out to individual budgets in the past. And so it's a revised increase of about $229,000 as opposed to what was budgeted for this year. So I don't know if that gives you an overview of, okay. Yes, thank you.
So what we tried to do, going back to something that Amy said, was really try and take a look. What's the best way we can track this? What's the best way that you can watch, that you can see how we're doing? And where does it make sense to have some of these expenses clustered in? And I would also tell you that, and you know this from being on the commission, that the city and the county are actually doing budgeting 6 months out. We're trying to make a guess of what happens the rest of this year. We're trying to look at a crystal ball, look in and see what happens next year. School districts actually do it 18 months out. So it's really the best guess we can do based upon some empirical data and some trends that we think we are seeing.
I might just say too then that if we look at our 2021 budget, we won't have these wild swings or double-digit changes because we're putting the expenses in the appropriate categories this year. I mean, I'm thinking like the health savings account and
Well, I would say yes. Yes. And I kind of hedge because I don't. What we didn't look to do those changes for a one-time change. We really looked to try and get that smoothed out in the future and keep those in those categories that make sense. So
yeah. Okay. And the bottom line is on this, the actual change amount is going down 5.7 million. So.
And that's overall. And the other thing I would say,
Excuse me just a minute. Dennis, would you mind turning on the lights, please? Thank you.
And the other thing I would say is, as you look at this, realize that everything from the commission budget down to employee benefits, those are all captured in the general fund. So that's where we did the shifting in there, was to try and have a more realistic budget and that made sense to people who might be looking at this when we are not here.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Well, we have them handy. Okay. At this time, I would open up the public hearing to the public, and we do have a registered speaker this evening, Gene Hurt. Would you like to address the podium and, for the record, tell us your name and address?
My My name is Gene Hurt, H-I-R-T. I am at 219 West 4th Street in Linden, Kansas, 66451.
Okay. And Gene, as I said earlier during the public comments paragraph that I read, your comments will be limited to 3 minutes.
Just 3 minutes, huh?
Yes, sir.
Well, it's going to be kind of rough because, okay, the first thing I want to make point is the reason I'm here tonight, I think is obvious for what's happened on August 1st. And I was here on the budget or for the study session Monday, and I'll get to it. Have you ever asked the people out here in the city what their concerns are for this town? Have you?
Yes.
You have. And what were they?
There were a number of different concerns.
Okay. Well, the concerns I see and I heard, Richard made a comment about major investments that he just stated here a few minutes ago. There's one, he talked about Proximity Park, which is one, but you left one out. He didn't mention, but I mentioned it Monday, the hotel. For 2 years, 2 years since you started, you and the county, on the hotel. And as I told you about the materials that are out there rotting. Now, what do you have in an emergency fund that occurred now, because you're probably going to have lawsuits on you because of the businesses that lost everything? I know you work at the bank, Kansas State Bank, hurt. You had Dodd Monuments over here, hurt. Sure, businesses lost. They're not business. You're not open right now. How do you tell those people and those businesses to stay here? You lost Ponchos. You lost another restaurant up here. There used to be a Chinese restaurant. They're gone. So how do you keep these businesses coming to town, and what do you tell these people to keep their mill and their property going to stay here in this town? You don't want them leaving. What do you do? So as I said, it's a rough situation, but you got to make sure, and I think you need to really look at this again tonight. Are you sure you're asking enough for another tragic emergency next year like what you just experienced on August 1st? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comments this evening? Any other public comments? Last call for public comments. At this time, I would close the public hearing. That'll move us on to item 11.
Adoption of the 2020 budget.
Following public discussions and many weeks of study sessions, as well as tonight's presentation and comments during the public hearing, adoption of the 2020 budget is recommended. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner?
I move that we adopt the 2020 budget as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the 2020 budget as presented. Is there any discussion?
Just to point out to the public that, again, this is the maximum we can go. We could and may lower some of these items here, but just for the sake of the public hearing and the vote today, this won't be any higher than this. It could be lower.
Okay. Is there any further discussion?
I think in talking through this, we have actually we're going to operate on less funds than we did projected yet. A year ago, we operated on less funds this year than we projected a year ago. And coming forward, we're going to be down almost 10% from this year's stated budget. So we've made really good progress. We're kind of forced to that due to some previous budgeting issues. The mill levy will stay the same. The tax dollars will increase from that, but most of the savings is in cash transfers from other departments. Only 10% of our budget is derived from mill levies. And so I think we're on the right track of getting this thing efficient, covering some things that we have overlooked in the past, and maybe in doing some improvement on accountabilities and responsibilities and efficiencies. So I think that's all I have to say. I'm looking forward to the coming year and how it all works out. And some of those funny graphs maybe we'll smooth out over the coming years.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's proceed to vote.
How do you vote, Commissioner Weigand?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Mayor Jorgensen?
I vote yes, motion carries. Let's move on to item 12.
Request for a public hearing for the purpose of considering condemnation of an unsafe and dangerous single-family structure located at 703 South Cherry Street.
This public hearing has been called for the consideration of condemnation of a single-family structure located at 703 South Cherry. City staff will present the details of this request for the condemnation. At this time, I will open this public hearing. Terry, would you like to address this item?
Good evening. What we're doing is for a request for a couple different addresses. The first one is for 703 Cherry Street. It's had various violations on it for numerous years and back taxes on it. But this time we're just asking for recommendation for consideration of condemnation on this property. Move it forward.
There you go.
There it went. Okay. This is 703 Cherry. It's had, some of these are fairly older pictures. We haven't taken any recent pictures, so these were from the interior of the structure. We haven't been inside the structure for some time. The building's been without utilities for numerous years. So within this, we were asked for a recommendation for the structure to be out for condemnation. Once it's put out for resolution, that would be mailed to the owner. Any lien holders that may be out there for a duration of 10 days for them to respond back to us and have opportunity to correct the situation. So do you have any questions on this particular?
Any questions for Mr. Elmer? Okay. Would anybody in the gallery like to address this property? Call for comments on this property. Last call for comments on this property. At this time, I would close the public hearing. Item 13.
Request for approval of resolution to condemn an unsafe and dangerous single-family structure at 703 South Cherry Street.
This resolution authorizes the governing body to declare the single-family structure located at 703 South Cherry Street to be unsafe and dangerous, and to direct that such structure be demolished or repaired and made safe and secure. Do I hear a motion?
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. As such, is there any discussion?
I might want to point out, and I say this every single time we talk about condemning structures, that I strongly dislike using public dollars to condemn structures. However, when properties really bring down the value in a community or in a neighborhood, or when individuals choose not to take care of their residents, it leaves the public responsible to make sure it's taken care of. I'm always in hopes that we recover some of that money. However, I recognize that we don't always do so.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's proceed to vote.
How do you vote, Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Weigand?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Mayor Jorgensen?
And I vote yes, motion carries. Let's move to item 14 of the agenda.
A public hearing for the purpose of considering condemnation of an unsafe and dangerous single-family structure and accessory structure located at 830 South Elm Street.
The public hearing has been called for the consideration of condemnation of a single-family structure and accessory structure located at 830 South Elm Street. City staff will present the details of this request for condemnation. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. Mr. Elmer, would you like to address this property, please?
Again, another property that, as the commissioner stated, we hate to see any kind of structure demolition or taken down. We'd like to see them maintained. This is one, as again, the most recent picture, as you've seen on the one where the roof is completely collapsed in the back. We have reached out to this individual, but they have moved out of state, and we have not been receiving any kind of communication on them. Utilities, again, have been out on this property, and it is also in with back taxes, delinquent taxes on the property. So this one as well, we're requesting for consideration for condemnation.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Is there any else who would like to address this item or this property?
I'd just like to ask Mr. Elmer, are there neighbors that have come forward in support of these homes being condemned? Any of these homes we're looking at tonight?
We have not had anyone come and speak with me or anyone else within the community development as far as these properties. We've had neighbors who have been concerned about them, but no one has, coming and spoken with us directly.
Okay, thank you.
You have been able to contact the owners or the alleged owners of both properties so far?
Yes, sir. This individual, I believe, is located in Texas. We have made communication with them, mailed out some letters directly to him with notifying what the proceedings are taking place here.
Richard, would you hit the lights, please? All right.
It's always interesting. At some time, these properties had some value, but
Yes.
even to sell them and pay your taxes and
Correct.
out of your control would make some economic sense, but they
And-
let them go to where they're worthless and we have to pay for them.
And again, this property as well as the previous structure, we would like to see them renovated, and so we can retain the structures as opposed to, removal of the structures, because then you lost the tax base off the structure. So these two properties both are up and able to be revitalized. If anyone would have the
gone
ability
too far.
and desire to so step up and want to do something with them.
And that would have to be either the property owner or someone that would contact the property owner to
That is
purchase the
correct.
property. Okay. Okay. All right, any further discussion from the commission on this item? I'll ask the gallery 3 different times for public comments. Is there any public comments on this item? Any additional comments? Last call for public comments. At this time, I would close the public hearing. That moves us on to item 15.
Request for approval of resolution to condemn an unsafe and dangerous single-family and accessory structure at 830 South Elm Street.
This resolution authorizes the governing body to declare the single-family and accessory structure located at 830 South Elm Street to be unsafe or dangerous, and to direct that that the structure be demolished or repaired and made safe and secure.
Mr.
Good.
Mayor,
Commissioner,
I move that we approve the resolution to condemn 830 South Elm Street.
is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? It's been moved and seconded as such. Is there any discussion?
I will say that I did drive by this property. I think this picture was taken some time back, as this deteriorated even more that last time I saw it here
That
about
is correct.
a month ago. In fact, I think all of our probably, especially after the rain we've had, deteriorated more than what the pictures show. But yeah,
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's proceed to vote.
How do you vote, Commissioner Skidmore?
yes.
Commissioner Weigand?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Mayor Jorgensen?
And I vote yes, motion carries. Let's move to item 16.
A public hearing for the purpose of considering condemnation of an unsafe and dangerous single-family and accessory structure located at 1007 South Locust Street.
This public hearing has been called for the consideration of condemnation of a single-family and accessory structure located at 1007 South Locust Street. City staff will present the details of the request for this condemnation. At this time, I would open the public hearing.
Again, on this particular property, this is recommendation for demolition only. The good news on this, we have had individual come in and pull a permit on July 31st for demolition. So this one is scheduled actually for the private property owner to come in and get it demolitioned on their own. We brought it to you for the request for demolition.
Okay.
Mr. Elmer, can you tell me about the length of that permit? When do you, that permit is good for how long?
They have 11 days. So once the structure has been pulled, they have a duration of 11 days to do something with the structure and get it demoed, and all their dump tickets would have to be turned in to us within that duration of time.
Okay. Any further questions for Mr. Elmer?
And this one is past restoration also.
This one is beyond restoration.
Okay. At this time, I would open the public hearing for public comments. Is there any public comments? Any comments on this location? Last call for comments on this structure. This time, I would close the public hearing. Let's move on to item 17, please.
Request for approval of resolution to condemn an unsafe and dangerous single-family and accessory structure at 1007 South Locust Street.
This resolution authorizes the governing body to declare the single-family and accessory structure located at 1007 South Locust Street to be unsafe or dangerous, and to direct that such structure be demolished. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion. We approve item 17.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded as such. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, let's proceed to vote.
How do you vote, Commissioner Kaler?
I vote yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitehand?
I vote yes.
Mayor Jorgensen?
I vote yes. Motion carries. Let's move on to item 18.
Impact fee reduction request.
This request made by Vandeventer Knight is to reduce impact fees by 50% for two building lots located at 924 and 938 Milner. The applicant will agree to install a home on each lot within 12 months. One home is already under construction, and the other will be started soon. I believe City Manager will present this item.
So no PowerPoint on this one, Commissioners.
Oh.
So we talked about this on Monday, and just a review, an impact fee is a special assessment by another name, but it is a different animal. Special assessment you put against the property, and whoever owns that property pays that assessment every year with their taxes, much like the coves. Okay, so in that theory, they pay their taxes. But an impact fee has been very popular in Ottawa for many, many years. And it's where you go ahead and you do the improvement. You may pass bonds, you may take that money out of another fund, and you do that improvement, and then you sit down and decide how that impact fee, how that's placed against the property. The property owner gets a letter from the city, and there's a process that you go through where everybody is legally notified, and I believe you have a hearing on that. And then that is given to this city clerk, and she certifies that against property over in the courthouse, I believe, over at the Register of Deeds. And the understanding is that when that particular piece of land is sold, then the owner, then whether the seller or the owner, they will pay that off in full. Several months ago, as part of your housing initiative to try and encourage new housing in the community, Over the past year, there's been some abatement of those fees, or I would say refunding, because they have to pay the fee 100%. And in the past, you've decided that it was in the public's interest for the housing to do a 50% abatement. It's being recommended that this be done at a 50% rebate also. And those, and one of these houses are already in the process of being built, and the other one is going to start shortly. And it is on lots at 924 and 938 Milner. And these particular impact fees go back to the year 2000. Year 2000, so almost 20 years ago. The impact fees against these two pieces of property are $9,538.33. $2,110.75 of that was for water improvements. $7,527.54 was for street improvement. And this particular money, when 50% of it, if you agree that 50% of it is abated, the other 50% will go back to economic development, because that's where 20 years ago those improvements were paid from.
Okay. Any questions for Richard?
Well, my comment would be is we do want to stimulate housing, but my concern, and whichever way I decide to vote on this, is that the houses are already being constructed. That's assuming the builder was assuming we would approve this, and it seems to me like before you start, you ought to get that understanding, because we could hang him out to dry, figuratively speaking, if we say no, because he's counting on it, and I think that's a bad decision.
Well, you're exactly right, Commissioner, but this is not all the builder's fault. This is likely my fault, because it sat on my desk, and I didn't move it forward in a timely manner that I should have.
And we have waived them before on those lots that we, as a city, sold.
City Commissioner, or City Manager Neinstead, is 50% the only option that we have for reduction?
No, I don't believe so, right? I believe the ordinance gives them the ability to do whatever percentage they want to do.
Yeah, you can,
the whole
Commissioner,
thing.
you can choose whatever percentage you want. You can abate the whole thing. You could rebate 20% or 25% or anything between 0 and 100.
Have we done any kind of a study as to how long it would take the property taxes to be recouped on the value of $175,000?
I have not,
I'm
Commissioner
just curious if
Skills.
anybody's done that. It may only take a couple of years. I would think a couple of years maximum, and we could have their money back on that. And I think, too, these builders have built several homes in our community, and I hope they continue to build. And so I think it's good to give them this incentive at their request, my personal opinion, but I know it's a lot of money, too.
I would also say that what's unique about this is that you're having infill. You're having new homes built in existing neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself, I think, is a good sign for the community.
I don't have any problem other than the timing. It's just start building and expect it to happen. It's kind of precocious.
And these properties became available to build upon between 15 and 20 years ago, and they have not been developed through this date, I guess, until they've started construction on one of the lots.
And I think, when the building permit's taken, and if we see more of this, we need to be in tune with that. I believe when the building permit is taken, they're supposed to make payment of those impact fees then. Right.
I agree. Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion we approve item 18 on our agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded as such. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, let's proceed to vote.
How do you vote, Commissioner Wygand?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Yes.
Mayor Jorgensen?
And I vote yes, motion carries. Let's move on to item 19, which is report by the city manager.
Commissioners, I'm going to give the bulk of my time to Public Works Director Mike Hafley, who's going to give you some additional information to the discussion we had on Monday about flooding.
Good evening, Commissioners. Okay. Richard asked me to kind of give another synopsis of the events that began on July 31st, Wednesday night, when it started raining. What I have up here is a map. It doesn't quite capture everything. I can't remember where the pointer is. But this is the north side of town, down at the bottom of the bottom lower left-hand part of the screen where all those little yellow dots are, or little yellow squares are. That is the Main Street intersection. Just behind that, Richard, do you know which button to push for the pointer?
We first turn it on.
Oh, that helps.
This one.
Ah, okay.
But don't shine it.
Okay. All right, so this area here is the Main Street intersection, right here. And right there, approximately, is the north pump station that is stationary to the levee. That's that little gray building out there. That pump station has two 18-inch pumps in it. Now, the pumps on that building there were set to automatic because we've had the sluice gates closed on all three of our pump stations since the spring due to the flooding we had in the spring, and the lakes filled up, both Melbourne and Pomona filled up, and have been letting water out since that time. So we've had the sluice gates on all three of our pump stations closed and all of the pumps set to automatic. This map, I'm going to back up here. This map, Wilson is up here. I couldn't quite capture everything. I apologize, but I'm without a GIS tech right now. But Wilson's up here. This is Co-op. This is the Main Street intersection. Everything on this map flows down to this lift station. Or, excuse me, pump station, not lift station. It's a pump station. Lift station is sanitary. So everything on that map right there flows to this holding pond right here behind. And to give another idea, this is Tecumseh Street. So Three Guys Liquor, Dodd's Memorial, Dollar General is all right here in this area. So we have a holding pond right here. This area right here also acts as a holding pond. This is Possum Run. This is all an open channel, and all these little yellow dots with the yellow lines are storm sewer systems that all flow over to this one area. So I put this up here to kind of give you an idea of how much water and where it comes from that goes to that pump station. That's really the only slide I have, so if we can get the light. I'll kind of run through
Mike,
the events
does
that
that water
happen.
have to go over the dikes, or does it go through the dikes
It
into
goes
the water
through.
that's already on the other side?
It's pumped through. There's a drainage tunnel through the levee at all three stations, but at the point where the river gets up past, I believe it's past 17 feet, we have to close the gates so that the river water won't back up into the city. And like I said, I want to say that again, we've had those gates closed since the spring because that water's just fluctuated too much, and we've had those gates closed, and the pumps have been set to automatic.
And Mike, when those pumps activate, I mean, the water flows to the river, there's not backup flow
They
of
are
any
pumped,
kind.
yes, that's correct. They're pumped directly to the river. Regardless as to what level that river is, those pumps have enough force to push it out to the river. You can, in fact, if you stand on the levee behind each one of those pump stations, you can see the water boiling up. When right behind those pump stations, you see the swirls and how the water's coming up right there. That's those pump stations pumping water through the levee. So to kind of back up here, I tried to put everything in chronological order, so it may not have made it. So, but once again, it started raining somewhere between 9 and 10 Wednesday night. By 10:42, we had our first employee, your first employee, was clocked in, and his sole purpose at that point was to go around to all 3 pump stations, making sure that those pumps were on, running, and doing what they were supposed to do. By midnight, we had an additional 2 employees come in, and they were helping with that because the water was starting to rise quick, as we know it did. I also want to kind of back up here and point out that we ended up with roughly 10 inches of rain in about 6 hours. That equates to a 500-year flood, according to the chart that that FEMA has in place right now. Now, whether they change that chart due to changing weather patterns, I don't know if that's coming or not, but according to what they have right now, this was over a 500-year flood.
So, Mike, and just, I Googled it earlier, and Ottawa, on average, receives 40 inches of rainfall in a year.
Yes.
So we got a quarter of the amount of rainfall that we get in an entire year within a 6-hour period.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
sir. You bet. Going back, I started reaching out, trying to find additional pumps by at around 4 a.m. We were able to get the county has an 8-inch pump. That's an 8-inch, yeah, I said that, 8-inch pump that we were able to get and had it in place by 5 a.m. over at Skunk Run. We had already put our 10-inch gator pump at the north pump station. The 8-inch pump that we got from the county, we put it in place over at the end of Skunk Run where it goes through the levee. So at Skunk Run, those 2 pumps are also 18-inch that were also working as they were supposed to. All in total, we ended up receiving 10 pumps from other communities or other government entities. The biggest pumps were the ones we got from the Corps. Those were gator pumps. Those are the ones that are tied to the back end of the tractor that we backed. So when you see the tractor backed right up to the water, or maybe the back wheels in the water a little bit, those are gator pumps, and they're operated off the PTO of the tractor. So we had the 3 pumps that we got from the Corps were one was a 10-inch and 2 of them were 12-inch pumps, and we tried to dispatch. We put all of those in place. Now I said we got 10 pumps in total from other entities, but it took a while to get them here, and as they came in, your employees met those other entities here at City Hall as fast as they could. And I want to be 100% honest, I think they were here every time within 5 minutes to meet them and get those put in place. The entities that brought the pumps, with the exception of the Corps, the other entities that brought those pumps helped us set them up to make sure that we knew how to run them, knew how to operate them, knew how to take care of them, and made sure that they were working properly. I covered all that. Something else that I also want to point out, Melbourne and Pomona Lakes did not cut their discharge rates down until after the rain stopped. And it takes about 24 hours, once they start releasing water, it takes about 24 hours for that water to get here. So when they close the gates, it takes about that long for the evidence to show here as well. So, so take the amount of rain we got coupled with the water that the lakes were releasing, that's what caused some of the issues. At approximately 2 p.m., the river reached a height of 33 feet, which is when we closed the Main Street gates. And as you all know, we left those gates closed over the weekend because the traffic signals were not working due to the flood issue at the Main Street intersection. But once we were able to get the lights back up to the condition that they're in, which is flashing four-way red in all four directions, we worked with KDOT, and they agreed it was safe to open everything back up to through traffic. So that's what we did.
And KDOT was involved because it's a state highway.
Yes, sir.
Good.
That's correct. That's correct. But one thing I want to end with, actually I want to end with two things. I want to assure you that your employees were doing what they were supposed to be doing when they were supposed to be there. That's important to highlight. You've got a great group of employees that work for this city. They all work together during this event, and I couldn't be more proud of them, and I hope you are too. The last thing I want to take and mention here is the help we got from the County Emergency Management Department. I've worked for other communities where that department comes in and tries to take over the situation, and that's not their job. Their job is to be a resource. I really commend the county for the way they came in. They helped. They asked what we needed. They held meetings, to update us on the weather situation, and those meetings were also with other entities, not just the city. We had the county, we had KDOT, we had fire, police. Everybody was there working together. So I just wanted to point that out.
Michael, Dad, a quick
Subject
question
question.
too. Now, we mentioned there's 3 pumps along the levee system. So we mentioned Skunk Run, which is behind the Don Woodward Center, right?
Yes, quite a ways behind.
And then this one we talked about here, what do we call this one? This
That's the north pump station. Sometimes it's called the Pence
Okay.
pump station, but for me, I call it the north one.
north, and then the third one is,
The third one is on the south side of the levee where Willow Street ends, essentially.
Okay.
So as you go over the bypass
Okay.
bridge and you look down, that little gray building down there, that's the Willow Street pump
you
station.
didn't address that one. That one is operational as
Now,
well.
all 3 pump stations were working as they were supposed to.
Automatic, okay.
Yes.
And each pump station has an 18-inch pump, 2 18-inch pumps in each station.
Actually, the North Station and Skunk Run have 18-inch. The Willow Station has 12-inch pumps.
Okay.
Are there grates over the pumps like debris? Could they slow up the flow of water if logs or something would lodge in those as they float in?
There could be, but
You haven't seen that?
we haven't seen that. Realize that the intake for those pumps is clear down at the bottom and debris floats.
Okay.
So,
Obviously, it would have taken twice as many pumps maybe to keep any flooding from happening, or is there any way to estimate? I mean, in going forward, is it practical fiscally to install more pumps to handle a 500 or Century type?
I think it's important that we look at purchasing additional pumps, not stationary pumps like the pump stations that are already on the levee that came when the levee, that were installed when the levee was built. But I think it's important that we,
Have some pumps available,
yes,
even if they were cooperative, maybe with other cities or something.
yeah.
Good. City manager.
So that's an important question, Commissioner Wygam, which we're going to take a look at further. And we don't have the data yet that would answer that question for you. And that's going to take some discussions with likely an independent engineer who's familiar with this, the Corps and FEMA. And if you think about this, the weather patterns have changed in 60 years. I'm making that statement. It's not, I mean, they've changed. So what we need to do is find somebody who can look at those metrics again and give us what that means to us. When, you know, what event do we plan for? Because when they built the levee and when they put those pumps in, there was a certain event that they were prepared to, a maximum event. And somebody made the decision that if you put money in for over that event, then you were just kind of, because of the low probability, that was not money well spent. So we will have an answer to that question at some point. It just is not tonight.
But it has been since 1951 that happened.
And really, it's kind of a misnomer when you talk about a 100-year flood or a 500-year flood. We had a flood. Okay, we're safe. We can wait another 100 years before it happens again. That's not the case. A 100-year flood means that there is a 1% chance of flooding. A 500-year flood means that there is a 0.5% chance of flooding. And so, just to keep that in perspective as well. Okay, anything else, City Manager? At this time, we'll move on to reports by City Commissioners. Sarah?
Not at this time.
Tom?
I have done.
Mike?
And I will commend Michael and your staff. You guys, I know you put in a lot of hours. This has been an unusual year for you guys. And we're not talking about just the other day. We're talking the whole year. It's been a difficult winter as well. And so I just commend your staff for the hard work they've put in, and I don't know how many hours they've had to stay away from their families and concerned about their own homes possibly flooding or basements flooding, but yet they came to work to help our city reduce the flood damage. So thank you, Mike, and your staff, and good job, all your people.
Well said, Mike. Reports by the mayor. We do have a need for an executive session this evening, but first I'll read the announcements. Our next study session will be on August the 12th at 4 p.m. at City Hall. August 16th, there is the Teen Back to School Bash. It's going to be held at the Gopper Teen Park from 4 to 9 p.m. And our next regularly scheduled meeting will be at 9:30 a.m. on August 21st at the City Hall. At this time, I would ask for a motion to go into executive session for attorney-client privilege for a period of 15 minutes. Which will begin as soon as the door is closed.
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner.
I'll make that motion if we can have just a 2-minute break before we start.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to go into executive.
Mr. Mayor, I would just point out, remember with the legal changes on the Kansas Open Meetings Act, you have to state both the rationale and the reason. So in this case, you're going in for attorney-client privilege for the purpose of having confidential communications from the board's attorney.
Okay, I'm sorry, I omitted that portion of it. Let's start the executive session at 8:25 according to the clock. And there will be no action after the meeting. At 8:40. Okay. So if we can clear, thank you.